Hello, this is Barry Coombs from ComputerWorld. I'm joined by my colleague, Adam Gleeson.
Hello.
Today, we're going to talk around 4 security products that we believe will help businesses that are in our typical customer base, so small to medium-sized businesses, anywhere between, 50 and 1,500 users, help overcome security challenges that they have in their business. This webinar comes shortly after our Define Tomorrow event that happened in Bristol. We had approximately 200 attendees join us to meet sponsors, to see demonstrations, but to also importantly hear from our keynote speakers. We had VMware's CTO Joe Bagley, Jamie Woodruff, an ethical hacker, Ruben Sprite, who talked about workspace transformation, and Peter Barnes from Dell, talking about the Dell technology portfolio. One common theme across all of those presentations was around security and the need to be more secure. Now, why is security such a growing concern inside business? Why is it such a trend at the moment? And it's all about increasing risk. You can't help but look at the BBC News app or any common news publication and see that cyber attacks are happening more often. WannaCry obviously happened earlier on this year. The NHS was really affected, as well as a lot of other private businesses. And we're more and more regularly seeing that businesses are being hampered by ransomware or other types of cyber risk. But it's also about the loss of data. We're going back for a long time, but certainly TalkTalk had a large security breach. And more recently, I think it was Equifax, Adam, had a breach.
Absolutely, yeah. It was literally millions of US citizens, and the last count was over 100,000 UK citizens' personal information was released, well, whether it was released or taken from Equifax. So scary stuff.
Definitely. And I think from that perspective, if you couple all of that plus with the impending implementation of the GDPR regulations, where I think it's something along the lines of 4% of your global turnover or 20 million euros fines if you're found to be in breach of the regulations, businesses are really needing to kind of stand up, look at the way that they're dealing with security. One important aspect is make sure that everything is secure by design. Whenever you're implementing a system, you're saying how do you secure it to start with, and it isn't a sticky plaster anymore. So we're going to look at 4 important areas, those being auditing, antivirus, patch management, and end-user education. Clearly, there are many more areas that are very important, but these are 4 areas that we wanted to focus on today with some products that we have to strategically help you. Those being Netwrix, that is an auditing product that will help you with change control and understanding what's going on in your environment. Bitdefender, which is a next-generation antivirus product. Avanti patch to help you patch your whole environment. That includes Windows, Microsoft and non-Microsoft applications. And Phishme, which is all about end-user education, allows the IT manager to become the ethical hacker and to really test your users' skills for detecting what a phishing email looks like. So without any further ado, we're going to try and limit the slides as much as possible and dig straight into demonstrations. So I'm going to start by talking about Netwrix. Netwrix Auditor is a Windows application that will be installed on a dedicated server inside your environment. On the back end, it requires a SQL server with reporting services. You can use Express in a small environment. On a slightly larger environment, you will want a full copy of SQL to keep enough data. It's very quickly and very easily configured with a number of different products. You can see a taste from the left-hand side, but if I click all data sources here, you can see the various different elements that can be monitored inside your environment. So we've got Active Directory, file servers, Exchange, Office 365, SharePoint, SQL Server, Windows Server, Group Policy, VMware, as well as hardware appliances from the likes of EMC and NetApp. Furthermore, they have a very extensive API, and if you go to their website, you can also see other products that are able to be easily integrated with the product, maybe with not quite as much robust levels of reporting, but certainly offering a significant amount of functionality. So we can see that my demo environment here at ComputerWorld has been configured for a number of different monitoring activities. If I go to the file servers, you can see that I've set up my file server as a data source. If I go edit, you can then see from here what we're monitoring. So I've got the file server as a computer, but I've also got an individual share. You can see the last time it updated, it looks like I've had a bit of an issue last time, so I'm just going to click update there. That should rectify that issue. And we can see the last time. Now, this isn't a real-time monitoring application. This is all about auditing what has gone on over a period of time. So what will happen is some of them will be monitored every hour, some of them only every 24 hours. I think in the example of the VMware infrastructures, that does tend to be something like every 24 hours. And once we've set up all those sources, we then are able to look at a number of different ways of looking at that data. So the first of those is the enterprise overview that gives you a really good high-level overview as to what's going on inside your environment. Inside here, we can very quickly see that there's an upward trend in changes going on in the infrastructure. This being the demo environment, I spent a lot of time setting up demos today to make sure I could show you what was going on. And that also shows that I am making an extensive amount of changes inside the environment, up to nearly 1,000. Now, if that was showing as one of your users, maybe someone that's just handed in their notice, you know to go and have a look and understand what's going on with that. We can see what those changes are very quickly and very easily by simply clicking the bar graph next to my name, and it's going to go through that information and display all the changes that I've made. So you can see that I've removed files, I've created files, we've got 87 pages worth of activities here. So it really gives you that extensive rundown as to what's going on. We can, of course, further filter that to go through what's going on inside the environment and what we're doing. And we can see by far I've been making those changes to FS01, the file server. And you can also see from here the various different graphs that will also reflect that as well. So if we go back to the start and we have a look at some of the other options that are available, we've got the failed activity trend. This is really good to see what's going on inside your environment. Something like brute force attacks will be highlighted here. So if something's going on, someone's trying to get into your environment. We can see here that we've got a user called Ollie Test that has made 49 failed attempts to log in somewhere inside the infrastructure. Now, obviously, that would be very concerning. Being the demo environment and knowing that Ollie is my Microsoft architect, I could probably guess that he has set up a service account that will have been failing to log in because of a password issue or something like that. If I actually click the 49 attempts, it will go through and show me what's going on. So I can see that it was onto DC01, Ollie Test was the account, and it's because the password has expired. He needs to change the password. So Ollie will be the first to say, always make sure you use service accounts. It's the demo environment, so I will let him get away with it this once, but that's a good reason of any to make sure you're using the proper security, the proper methods to make sure that you're looking after your environment. Now, if we go back to the beginning, we are also able to use a Google-esque search facility. So if I was to type my name in here, it will go through all the logs and look at all the changes that I've made inside the environment. So we can see, hopefully any second now, that it comes back. What we can also see is that it has a video functionality, and we're able to configure this so it will monitor certain activities. But if I find something that has been done recently, so there we go. We can go and see something that's been going on here. I can click show video, and what happens is a black and white low frames per second video is recorded. It only takes up a few meg, but we can actually see what's gone on inside the environment and what happened. Now that's really good for keeping an eye on change inside the environment, but it also works well for me, because when you are installing something, doing modifications inside your environment and it goes wrong, the first thing you do is start to question, actually, did I do it right? Did I click the right buttons? Did I put the right data in there? So the first thing you can do is come into Netwrix Auditor and actually watch back what you did on it. It's kind of a little bit like Big Brother's watching. I know when I showed Adam what was going on inside the environment, he started to panic to see actually what he'd been doing on the server environment. The user does get a notification inside that environment that will show what has happened. So that is the search functionality. We can couple this with who, action, what, when, and where functionality. So I can go what action, so something was removed. We can search for a specific object. We can search for a time frame. And I can also say where. So I might say FS01. So this is now going to look for an action removed on FS01 with barryc.admin. And it's then going to go through and do that. On this example, I haven't had any matches. We also have an extensive list of reports inside of here. One of them that I wanted to show you was a report for sensitive data. I'm going to look for a creation of any files that may contain sensitive data. Certainly if you're PCI compliant and with GDPR compliance coming in, it's important to know that any data we're storing is stored in a very secure, encrypted manner. We can see here that I have created a file called creditcardinfo.txt, which clearly, if I go to that and it actually has credit card information in it, wouldn't be a very secure way to save credit card information. Now, in this example, it's purely a test, but we can see that it's been flagged up there. I can click Free Actions, and I can see what actions have actually happened with that file inside this environment. So if I go View Reports, we would see in there what data that we'd want. If we have a look at another one, so if I search for potentially harmful files, and I'm going to look for activity around any potentially harmful files, and we can set up subscriptions so we're alerted. So in the example, we're only searching for exes and com files, but we could change that to PS1, batch files, or if ransomware is a concern, it's a specific file extension, we could make sure that we add that and we then get alerted. So we can see here the most recent one at the bottom is virus.exe has been created on FSO1 in the UEM share. Now clearly that doesn't sound very good. It's something that we probably should need to go and rectify and we should be monitoring. But imagine if that was a ransomware attack and it was changing your files time and time again to a certain extension. We could be highlighted from that. It is important to remember, though, this isn't about active alerting. It's over time, so it wouldn't necessarily alert you to the second of it happening. We have an extensive amount of reports out of the box here, so we can see that it is able to integrate with the Active Directory element, so we can look at change inside Active Directory, group policy change, SQL, certainly keep an eye out for any deleted data or anything like that. We're able to look for logins, extensive integration into VMware and things that may have happened in VMware, machines powered on, powered off, snapshots. So if I go and have a look at the power state change in VMware, we can see virtual machines that may have been powered on and powered off. No specific activity over the one-day period that I've looked at here to have a look at. But we can also see a wide variety of compliance reports. So if I go to GDPR, we see that Netwrix has given a clear rundown of the GDPR principles that it is able to help with. And then inside that, we're able to see the reports that will be able to help us. So changes by user, we're able to see group policy changes, Active Directory changes. We're also able to audit things like who is an administrator inside a specific group and things like that. So I really, really like this tool. It's very quick, very easy. We've got subscriptions so we can get information. We've got active alerts. It integrates with all the critical business systems. It's very easy to install and it's priced very fairly. So even for a small environment, you can implement it to get a real insight into what's going on.
It's that visibility of stuff that as an administrator, it's so difficult to get that information out, and that's where Netwrix really has a key role to play.
Definitely. So we're now going to move on to Adam. Adam, we've got a few slides here, so I'll share those on my screen if you want to talk through them, and then let me know when you kind of pass over to your screen.
Okie doke. So GravityZone from Bitdefender is the antivirus solution that we recommend for all of our customers. A few points to note. It's a single console. Bitdefender have this sort of tagline of one architecture application console agent with multiple layers of security. The idea being is that we want a one-stop shop for us to be able to administer the security from an antivirus and from an endpoint control perspective in the environment. It's deployed as a virtual appliance onto a hypervisor. So there is no underlying requirement for a Windows operating system or for SQL databases or anything like that. Excuse me, sorry. And just looking at it from the endpoint perspective, Bitdefender have a tiered approach to protection, which whenever I'm talking to customers about security, the days of old where we used to have extremely rigorous perimeter security, I've heard this sort of the egg and an onion analogy. In the days of old where we had extremely rigorous perimeter security and a hardened perimeter, very much like an egg, but the actual inside of our environment was soft and squishy. the way that we should be doing this nowadays is not putting all of our eggs in one basket. And that's to use a tiered approach to this. So it's much more like an onion with concentric rings or layers of security. Now, Bitdefender, aside from that, so in addition to having your tiers of security, so perimeter security, Netwrix auditing, and all of that good stuff, as well as email filtering, Bitdefender themselves have a tiered approach to how they protect your endpoints. So one of the first points to note is that Bitdefender have developed a ransomware vaccine. So what this essentially is a few file and registry flags that are set on the endpoints that it's been found within the vast majority of ransomware threats that are out there. Prior to ransomware installing itself, or once the user has taken the action or has got in through an exploit, prior to it installing itself, it actually checks to make sure that there's no other ransomware installed on the system. If it notices any of these things, these flags or registry settings are actually there, it won't actually install itself. The idea being is that they don't want their competitors stamping all over them and denying them of their ransom, so they're trying not to do the same to their competitors. However, it typically schedules itself to run at a later date, the intent being that at that point you would have paid the ransom, and then you're going to get hit with a second lot of ransomware that's sat there in the background. Bitdefender have essentially found that by spoofing this, they can stop the majority of ransomware infections and stop the ransomware from actually running just by spoofing those file and registry flags. So that's the first tier of protection that Bitdefender give you, so effectively a vaccine. As the file is then accessed on the hard drive, it is then scanned against the standard list of signatures. So this is what all of the AV out there does. This is what any kind of traditional standard AV will actually do. There is then something that Bitdefender call behave, and it actually analyzes the behavior or what the anticipated behavior of the threat actually is. So it looks for what it's going to actually do, and if it's going to do something naughty, it's obviously going to get stopped. Once it's then running, advanced threat control is another tier of security that Bitdefender has, and it actually continually monitors how the application is running or the process is running on the environment. If it sees it doing, or if it sees the process behaving in a way that is known to be associated with malware, it will keep an eye on that process. If the application or the process continues to misbehave itself, then at that point Bitdefender steps in and stops it from running. There are a couple of other bits that I will come on to in a moment, namely around the sort of next generation of security solutions. And this is something that is still sort of fairly new to Bitdefender. It's an additional subscription on top of the business security or the advanced business security that most of our customers use. And it addresses the sort of next gen AI and machine learning antivirus that we're starting to see come out now. And the intent of this is to give you really, really robust protection from zero-day attacks. Now, it's arguable that with Bitdefender as it is today, without the next-gen element, because it's doing the behavioral analysis and it's doing the advanced threat control to monitor what it's doing as it's running, there's a degree of machine learning and AI going on there already. However, these other ones or these other next generation solutions are really aimed at pre-executions and catching it before it actually starts to execute in the environment. Now, one of the things that Bitdefender have noticed in sort of the trend with regards to how the industry is adopting this next generation antivirus is that they're starting to stack multiple security solutions on top of each other. And that's the reason for that is because a lot of these next-gen antivirus solutions don't actually provide the endpoint security features that a lot of our bread-and-butter antivirus do. The likes of having a firewall that's separate to the Windows firewall, or enforcing some kind of device control, for example, to lock down the access of USB, or the ability to plug in USB pen drives and stuff like that. A lot of these next-gen solutions don't have that functionality. They're purely aimed at stopping these things in their tracks. So the consequence being that we end up stacking multiple solutions on top of each other, and all of this is adding to the workload that's being applied on the PC. And we're arguably taking a step back 10 years, where PCs are starting to struggle with the burden that the security software is placing upon it. So if I just take you through a very quick demonstration of the Bitdefender GravityZone control center now, which is the administration interface. So this is the dashboard view that you get presented with having logged into GravityZone. And the idea here is that it gives you a one-stop shop to give you a quick overview of what's going on in your environment. You can completely customize this. So this is just my personal preference, looking at sort of what device control is being used. Now, this is in a demo environment, so it's not terribly interesting to look at. But in a live environment, then you're obviously going to see a lot of stuff going on in here. I'll just quickly step through these rather than sort of beating you over the head with it. But the idea being is that it's going to give you an overview, and you can customize this to how you want to actually look at it. Bitdefender will also do work and protection around mobile devices as well. So that was the main intent of including this one. And it also protects your internal Exchange servers as well, if that's something that you want to do. The reason that you might do that despite having external mail filtering is that the external mail filtering, well, depending on how you've got your email routing set up, external mail filtering may not pick up a malicious attachment that's sent from one internal mailbox to another internal mailbox. So by installing protection onto the Exchange server itself, it gives you protection from that so that the nothing nasty can be sent from a disgruntled employee who knows he's on his way out the door. If I then step through onto the next tab, this is the network page. So this is where we can actually orchestrate. We can do this via Active Directory or vCenter integration. And this gives us the ability to then remotely deploy agents out onto the endpoints that we've got in our environment. If I just quickly take a look at this one here. When we come in here, it gives us a summary of the versions that are installed and indeed the different modules that are installed. And I'll come on to talk a little bit about them in a moment. I've mentioned the different packages that we can install. So the idea being with Bitdefender, rather than having multiple different packages for all of the different operating systems that we've got out there, we only configure a single package. So in this instance, I've got one for virtual desktop and one for virtual servers. I could just as well have another one for endpoints, but I could also use the best for VDI on physical endpoints as well. Bitdefender will intelligently understand, or it will enumerate the operating system and the CPU architecture of the endpoint, and it will select the most appropriate installer for that. One of the things that Bitdefender customers reported back, and indeed you've probably found it with your own AV, is that when you're doing remote deployments or you're scripting remote deployments, it's very important that you're targeting the right operating systems with the right deployment package. Otherwise, it's obviously not going to install properly. So this is a really clever bit of intelligence that Bitdefender have put in there just to reduce the administration overhead here. And when we go to create a new endpoint package, we can select the modules that we want to actually install. Advanced threat control and anti-malware are fairly straightforward and fairly self-explanatory, as is firewall, content control, device control. Power user gives the administrator the ability to specify a password so that if they did have to do some administration tasks on the endpoint, without having to go through the rigmarole of uninstalling the antivirus because it's stopping you from doing some administrative functions, you can use the power user to elevate your privilege over the antivirus and temporarily disable it so that you can do the administration work that you want to do, and then you can then re-enable it. Application control is something that I will come on to later, and that's part of the GravityZone Elite product, which is a new product from Bitdefender. And also the encryption there with Bitdefender. There's now an additional subscription charge that you can pay for the feature of encryption, and you can then enforce encryption on your endpoints as well using the GravityZone Bitdefender client. I mentioned that we can use the same endpoint package for both computers and for virtual computers as well. And we can either set the scan mode to automatic, or if you're a little bit OCD about these things like I am, then I like to specify how I want it to actually behave. So with computers, we can do a local scan. That's not to say that we couldn't do a central scan being where we offload the CPU and RAM overhead of scanning that onto a dedicated virtual appliance. So that's typically used for virtual machines, certainly in virtual desktop and remote desktop environments. When we're using central scanning, there's the possibility that for whatever reason, network disruption has occurred or the scanning appliance is having a problem. Rather than leaving those machines completely unprotected, we can specify a fallback mode of scanning. In this case, I've got hybrid scan. I could use local scan, but hybrid scan is a much lighter footprint with regards to CPU and RAM consumption, and uses a far more intelligent way of actually scanning the servers themselves. Because we're using central scanning, I've also selected the GravityZone virtual appliance that I'm using here. So that's where the CPU and the RAM consumption will occur when scans are running. Just continuing to step through the console here, there's quite a bit of built-in reporting functionality that comes with GravityZone as well. So this particular one, I've just run a quick report to see the endpoint protection status, and it gives us a fairly thorough rundown of which machines are protected and which machines are not. If we wanted to go back and actually look at which machines are not being protected currently, we can do that from the dashboard view. And as you can see from these bar graphs here, part of the machines in the environment are being managed, but some of them are not. If I click on the unmanaged, it will give me a filtered list and show me which virtual machines are actually not being managed by GravityZone at the moment. So the next main piece really that I wanted to show you in here, and again, what I'm trying to iterate throughout this demo here is that everything's in one place. It's one console for you to do all of this work. You're not having to do some of it on the endpoint, some of it in the packages, and some of them in the administration console. It's all fairly self-explanatory. There's a couple of points here that I'll come on to in a moment, the Sandbox Analyzer and application control, for example. But it's fairly self-explanatory, to be honest, but you can set it all up through here. When you make changes to these policies, the policies are pushed out instantly, and typically within 2 to 3 seconds, you can actually see the policy taking effect on the endpoint. So some solutions that I've worked with in the past, you make a change to the policy, and then you're sort of sat there for 20 minutes saying, well, has it made the change or not? And it's very difficult to tell. With GravityZone, it's nice and quick. Now, I mentioned application control. Part of GravityZone Elite, which again is the top tier of GravityZone licensing, is the ability to whitelist applications. Now, going back to controlling what is actually running on the endpoints, whitelisting applications is extremely powerful. If we whitelist applications, we say these are the applications that are allowed to run on the endpoint. Anything else that subsequently tries to run can't run. So you're going a long way with regards to stopping anything nasty actually getting in there. And even if someone does click on it, it's not going to be able to run because it's not on the whitelist. And again, this is an additional feature that you pay for, but it's also good for auditing and getting a feel for what applications are out there and how widely used they are in the environment. The final bit that I wanted to talk about that I mentioned just a moment ago in the policies is the Sandbox Analyzer. Now, this is part of Bitdefender's HyperDetect technology, so this is the next-gen AV. And the idea of the Sandbox Analyzer is to catch any kind of threats, including zero-day threats, in the pre-execution stage using machine learning and AI, as well as all the behavioral analysis and sort of the information that Bitdefender have picked up over the years around the different threats that are out there. The Sandboxer effectively creates an isolation environment on the endpoint. So prior to anything executing, it's executed within the Sandboxer. That means that Bitdefender is able to thoroughly analyze what the application is going to actually do before the application is actually allowed to run riot on the operating system. Now, if we could just change back to...
Head over to my screen.
Yeah.
So I think that was just a really good brief overview there of the Bitdefender console, as Adam mentioned there. The fact that it's a virtual appliance, there's nothing to install on a Windows server. It's all in one area together. The fact that it has that multi-layered approach, and one of the things that really kind of attracted us to Bitdefender in the first place was the fact that it's very lightweight.
Yes.
We saw a lot of the legacy antivirus getting very, very heavy, taking up a lot of resource. And you couple that with the offloading mechanism, then I think it's one of the top antiviruses that people should
Well, it consistently scores. There's a website called avtest.org that anyone who's listening to this may want to go away and just check, just to reassure yourself. They're an independent security consortium, and they assess all of the different security products that are out there today. And Bitdefender consistently score very, very highly with avtest.org. So in my opinion, it's one of the best AV solutions out there, arguably the best. Not a single Bitdefender customer was affected by the WannaCry outbreak, whether they had the XP operating system patched or not. So that in itself is where I would be hanging my hat if I was looking to get some AV. There's not many security vendors can actually lay that claim.
Fantastic. So moving on to the final two products now, and they're two very simple products that don't really require that much explanation. But Adam, we're going to pass over back to you for the Avanti patch management. Do you want to talk us through the few slides that you put together?
So patch management, as I'm sure everyone who's listening to this, or any administrators listening to this is aware, it's extremely difficult to be able to keep on top of this, and certainly to have any degree of confidence that everything in your environment has actually been patched and is running the latest version of the software with no sort of known exploits. Not sure how well this presentation will work because we've got a few things to step through. So let's, if Barry could just sort of move it forwards as a nod to him. So to begin with, we install Avanti patch onto a Windows server. It can be physical or it can be virtual in your environment. Avanti patch will then communicate with the internet or with the sort of the cloud services that Avanti patch are hosting in order to assess and to enumerate what patches are actually available. As you're aware, patches are released all of the time. Every time one of these patches is released, more often than not, it's to address a vulnerability that's been found in it. Now, Avanti have a dedicated team that are sort of have got direct links into the vast majority of the vendors and indeed Microsoft out there, and they get advanced notification or they get advanced visibility of the patches when they're coming out. The Avanti content team then enumerate and test and determine the detection and the deployment logic of those patches. So if there is a .NET update that's required in order to apply an application patch, then it will build that into the deployment logic to make sure that that .NET application patch is deployed prior to the actual application going out there. So the patch content is downloaded onto the Avanti patch server. And that is then used to enumerate, without the use of any agents, what we actually need on the endpoints themselves. And this can be endpoints, physical, virtual, or it can be servers. So it can be desktops or servers. So we do a quick scan. That comes back to the Avanti Protect server. The Avanti Protect server then goes and gathers all of the different updates and holds them in a central repository. And it then pushes those updates out onto the individual machines. The machines then install those patches under the control of Avanti Protect. And once they're done, then they will just reboot. So if I very quickly run through the administration console of this as well. So it's a very quick demonstration, just really to illustrate. Now, one of the taglines that Avanti have is they have this sort of, I don't know whether we can actually see it. The icon is a little arrow, and the idea is it's supposed to signify 20 minutes, because in 20 minutes you can have this deployed and you can get an assessment of what the patch status is of your environment. Not just the Windows patches, but with regards to the vast majority of application vendor patches that are out there as well. And it's really very simple. You set up a group of machines, or you can just use the default ones. You can use My Domain or Entire Network, and it will just discover machines that way. You can create your own custom patch scan templates to dictate what patches you actually want to detect, and so on and so forth. Once it's gone through this particular instance, I've only got it for one machine just for the purpose of this demo. So it's come back and it said that I've got 5 patches missing. I'm then able to go in here and take a look at the machines and what patches are actually missing. Oop, wrong one. Now, if I was doing this across my entire environment, I would have a huge list of machines over here. From this point here, you can simply right-click and then click Deploy Missing Patches. And as you can see down here, the patches are then pushed out to the endpoints.
Fantastic. So it's a very, very simple product. As you say, 20 minutes to install, and I think 20 minutes to configure is what they then say.
Finger trouble aside there, it's compared to, I used to administer WSUS back in the day, and it was a very heavy-handed approach. With this, we can automate it very easily. It's exactly the same principles. It just runs on schedules. You can automate the scanning of the environment. You can then stage the patches, which is obviously best practice, not to just go ahead and install them as soon as they come out. We have Patch Tuesday, and then we have Hotfix Thursday. I've heard mentioned a few times. So again, it's a no-brainer for me that if you wanted that sort of degree of confidence that you've not got any glaringly obvious loopholes or exploits available in your environment, the Avanti patch product works extremely well. And there's also a version that integrates with SCCM. So if you have an existing SCCM deployment, you can integrate with that. And then whilst SCCM is doing your WSUS and your Microsoft patches, the Avanti product will then add in the functionality so that you can actually patch all of the third-party applications as well.
Fantastic. So very easy, very quick. That ease of management is really, really important when it comes to patching, because it's a job no one wants to do, but we all know that we need to be doing it. So I highly recommend that you have a look at that. I think you can download it again for a trial period to see what the problem is in your environment.
I didn't mention that, but with both Bitdefender and with Avanti, you can download it and get 30 days free product function, with full product functionality.
Fantastic. So that leaves us to the last product now. So we've kind of looked at a lot of back-end systems. We've looked at the ways to keep the desktops and the computers safe. We've had a look at how to patch, and we've had a look at auditing and seeing what's going on. Finally, it's then how do we educate the user? And there's two trains of thought, really, and probably doing both together is the right way. One is to educate your users via classroom-led training, lunch and learns, e-learning or something like that. And what we really see there is that their knowledge goes up very high for a peak. And then over a period of time afterwards, if we were doing a bell curve, it would then go down over a period of time. What we want to do is have constant education, so it's constantly on the top of their mind. And that's where we came across this product called Phishme. So Phishme is a phishing simulator, so an email phishing simulator that you as the IT manager, IT administrator can be the ethical hacker, and you can really try and fool your users for the guise that you're trying to educate them. So it's a very simple product. You need to configure a little bit on Exchange or Office 365 to make sure the emails come through successfully. But once that's done, you come into this dashboard and we're able to create a phishing scenario that we wish to send out to the users. Now, Phishme have done a lot of research and looked into a lot of different phishing attacks to make sure they come up with a comprehensive list of attacks that you can roll out against your users. So certainly the one that we can see at the top here is a Christmas lunch voucher. So it's an email you could send out to your employees. We can click preview email and we could see what that may look like. That one is it's supposed to be very simple, maybe look like something that could have been created internally to go down to the canteen and get a lunch voucher. But you're also able to filter that based upon, okay, so I actually only want the ones that are in English. I don't have a global presence. I don't need anything that's in Spanish or Arabic or anything like that. So what I'm going to do, first of all, is come down, uncross my eyes and find English, which is at the top. We are then able to then go and see what do I want to do? So I want to simulate maybe a ransomware attack. So I can see that there's a telephone bill, Sage ransom that we could send out to the employees, which looks very much just like a standard email. It's not a marketing email. It's, please can we remind you to go to my profile so you can receive online statements. Please download the attached invoice. They download the attached invoice, and that's...
Bless you.
And that's when they really want to be educated, because that's the time where they click it.
I think this can't be underestimated. The power of Phishme really is, as a first line of defense, your user being aware of what they're clicking on is second to none. If the user doesn't click on the infected email attachment or whatever, the vast majority of ransomware infections can be avoided. All ransomware, almost, I say all ransomware, unless there's an exploit that's being very, very clever about it, but the vast majority of ransomware that's out there, it requires interaction from the user. The user has to click on something to kick the ransomware attack off. If the user doesn't do it, you won't get ransomware unless it's coming in through an exploit or a vulnerability, in which case you should be patching your environment, and that can close that loophole off.
Definitely. So what we're able to do here is we're going through it. We're able to fully customize it, maybe using the name of suppliers that you use or products that you use to make it a little bit more convincing. Once we've done that, we're then able to select the education they will receive if they do click on it. So in this example, because it's an attachment, the user will actually download a Word document. And what is in the Word document is a piece of training about are attachments safe, what to look for in the attachment, have a look at the extensions. So we're able to see quite an extensive list of training that is available. Just because I've chosen attachment here, that's what's available. But we're also able to load other types of scenario as well. Once we've then configured that to go out, and we can send it out randomly over a period of time, so all your users won't receive it at the same time. You could send it to all your users, but over a period of a month. We're then able to get full tracking and statistics. And you can see here the statistics that I've got. We sent out a Halloween e-card to our users recently. You can see that's what it looked like. So potentially it could be something that a family member has maybe sent to you or something like that. And we're then able to see the click data. So we did have 5 people that did click that internally, but that's okay. This isn't all about identifying the users that need to be told off. This is about making them more aware. They're all going to have clicked it. They're all going to have then gone to a website that can be fully customized with your logos on and things like that, that gives you a little bit of training about phishing. And there's videos, there's gamification, there's all these different types of training elements that are available.
The point is really from me with my security hat on and sort of coming from a security background, at this point it's too late. If this was something nasty, they've just infected you with ransomware. And that's why being able to, I mean, this is not a tool to go and beat them over the head with, as Barry said. It's just to raise your awareness. And so, I mean, I found myself even doing it. Back in the day when in a previous role that was very security sensitive, you double thought about every single, or you thought twice about every single attachment or every single email that you opened. You were looking for all kinds of sort of indicators that might show that this is something that's a bit dodgy, or it might not be from who you think it is, and stuff like that. The stuff, the way that the ransomware is being propagated now, especially via email, the ransomware will be in a self-extracting executable, or it can be in a self-extracting executable, but the icon on that executable is a Word document or a PDF document, and it may be coming from someone that you know. So I myself have caught myself, and it's only been when after you double clicked it, I must admit, not since Barry's been doing the phishing, because he did catch me out with one of them. I'm not having him catch me out again. I do double check now. But when I get an email from someone and I look at it, oh, there's a Word document on that, I just double click it without really thinking. And this is what Phishme has really done for me. It's helped me to just take a step back and start thinking about what I'm actually clicking on in my inbox. And if you can get your users doing that, you're really minimizing your attack surface. You're really minimizing the risk that someone is going to click on something that they shouldn't. There are still attack vectors. Someone could still click on something from a website by accident, or some of them even use drive-by attacks. So you don't even need to click on something on the website. You go to the website and it prompts you to download a file. And if the user is unfortunate enough to click OK, that could well be enough to do it. Sorry, Barry, talking over you.
No, that's all good. And the common thing that we hear in the office here is, now every time I get something with attachment, I'm not sure if it's one of Barry's test emails or if it's a real one.
Over their monitors at Barry.
And that is really the behavior that we want to put in there, because if users start to worry about every attachment they receive and do some sanity checking themselves, or do escalate it to the help desk to check, you're a lot less likely to become susceptible, as Adam said. And the important thing is, even though it may be just a Word document, it could be a macro inside the Word document that then could cause.
Well, no, that's the other thing, is often these self-extracting archives or whatever delivery mechanism they're using, they themselves do not contain the ransomware. So even by saving it to your desktop and then scanning it, the AV won't necessarily pick it up. Mm-hmm. It's only when you execute that, and by executing it, you're giving it permission to run. The macros inside it will then go off to an FTP site and pull the malicious software down. And because you've already given it the authority to run, the malicious software can then start to run on the environment.
Definitely. So that was it. That is all that we've really got to show you today. Hopefully you found it useful. As I say, it's 4 products that I really think that should be part of every IT manager's security portfolio to really help you get better awareness, better levels of protection, stay up to date, and help you really train your user. So hopefully you find today user. I think we've gone slightly over the 1 hour, but not by much. If you'd like any further information about those, if you'd like to trial them or have a more in-depth demo, please speak to your ComputerWorld account manager or call us on 01454 338 338. Thank you.